Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2015 Lockport Mayoral Debate being co-sponsored by Hometown 1340 WLVL and your hometown newspaper, the Lockport Union Sun and Journal. Please welcome to the stage Lockport Mayor Ann McCaffrey, a Republican, and her Democratic challenger, Mr. Roger Sherrie. Welcome to you both. We have determined the order by which you will receive the questions based on a coin toss at the start of the program. For that first question, I turn things over to my colleague, Joyce Miles.
The first question goes to Mayor McCaffrey. With so much of the city budget tied up in predetermined costs for personnel, including payroll, health insurance, and pensions, the best chance either of you will have to effect lasting change on city finances. Can you two hear me?
I could hear you.
Okay. All right. The best chance either of you will have to effect lasting change on city finances will come when negotiating new contracts with the city's union workforce. Unfortunately, that process has been fraught with controversy over the last several years. It's resulted in expensive litigation and deals that many taxpayers feel are too generous given the city's financial condition. Please tell us your mindset and what practical changes you will fight for when you're at the negotiating table with the city's union workforce.
Certainly. Thank you for the question. Yes, I think this past week is a good example of the negotiation style that I have with our city unions. We certainly had some issues that we needed to address with our police department union. We had great challenges there on both sides. I had an opportunity over a period of months to look at some of the challenges that we saw from the city's end, as well as some of the problems that the union was feeling from their end, needing more officers on patrol, feeling that the overtime was too much, trying to increase the safety of the officers. And then from the city's end, we were certainly concerned about the rising cost of health care. For us to have an opportunity to come to an agreement where we have a union who has agreed to have new members pay 15% of their health insurance for the duration of their time of employment with the city is a historic moment for our city. We've not seen that before, and I think on the other end, we've seen some benefits for the union that they're very satisfied with. They want to return to an 8-hour shift. We're able to do that with this new contract. I think of all the unions that we have, the police union contract difficulty was probably the greatest because we were in a bit of a murky area. And I think looking at all the issues that we had together, we all came to the table with a mindset that we wanted to work together and come to an agreement. We were able to do that. I know in this instance, we were able to all walk away knowing that the union is satisfied, the department will be able to run more efficiently, and ultimately the taxpayer is satisfied because the employees will be contributing towards their health care. I'd like to take that exchange that I've had with the police union and replicate that with the other unions, and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to do that. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Sherrie, 2 minutes.
I think the other unions would be very happy to have the same attention paid to their collective bargaining unit as the Hickory Club has. First of all, I think we need to dispel the notion that city workers are greedy, only concerned about themselves and no one else. Nothing could be further from the truth. They understand that they are not going to be successful, they're not going to be viable unless the city survives, unless the city is successful. When it comes to specifics regarding contract negotiations, for example, as the mayor says, health insurance premium contributions, well, in order to get to that point, you have to be willing to sit down and bargain in good faith with the unions. I don't think that's happened. I don't think that's happened with the other 3 bargaining units. Whether it was the threat of a lawsuit filed by the Hickory Club or politics or elections that played into the settlement, fine. I'm glad that there is a settlement. If we're going to make the biggest impact in city expenses, it's going to be in the realm of health insurance. Premium contributions are only one aspect of that. Probably the greater aspect is the type of health benefit service or health insurance benefits that you provide, whether it's done through through a third-party independent administrator or you do it through a vendor. It's when you sit down at the table with the with the unions, listen to what their conditions are, or listen to what their interests, particularly when it comes to health insurance. That, ladies and gentlemen, is where you're going to find your greatest amount of savings.
Very good. Mayor, 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Yes, I certainly look forward to further negotiations with our other unions. I would say in 2014, the most serious issue affecting the city was our fiscal distress, the possibility that we were going to run out of cash. And I have to say that first year, my focus was completely on protecting the city from bankruptcy and from going over the fiscal cliff, and we were close. We nearly ran out of cash in September. Everybody knows that. I think with the effort that I had to put into that in 2014, I'm glad that now that we're on more stable fiscal ground, I'm able to put that effort into negotiating with the unions, and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to do that with the other unions. I would like to state with the fire department union, they filed for impasse right around the time I became mayor. And when a union files for impasse, that means that they are too far apart to come to an agreement. So that will be determined in court, but I'm certainly hopeful. We have a negotiation scheduled with CSEA next week, and AFSCME's been at the table as well. So we have more work to do, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Sherrie, 1 minute for a final word on this topic.
I certainly understand being distracted by the financial difficulties during 2014, but we're now almost 11 months into 2015, and you count the times that the city has sat down with CSEA, with AFSCME, with the firefighters. I think it's going to be less than a handful of times. That's not good enough. The fact that the firefighters declared impasse and now have filed for special interest arbitration, that doesn't mean the negotiating process has to stop. There can still be communication, negotiation back and forth if both sides wish that to be. Again, you can't make progress in negotiations unless you're willing to sit down and bargain with the employee organization in good faith.
Okay, we will move on to our next question. Mr. Sherrie, it goes first to you. There are not very many issues this time of year that unite Republicans and Democrats in Lockport, but one thing virtually every voter can agree on is that the city must improve its efforts to rebuild roads and address tree trimming on city rights-of-way. As an example, one voter wrote to us before tonight's debate describing a nightmare story. The resident said a single tree had done thousands of dollars in damage to her property, even though she had asked the city on multiple occasions to trim it. Given the finite resources at your disposal, how do you plan to improve on a public works system that so many residents believe is failing?
Well, first, I think you have to lay the foundation for a long-term improvement plan for our streets and our sewer and our water. And I understand that resources are limited, but using that as the permanent excuse for not paying attention to the basics is not something that the public is willing to listen to or buy anymore. They're looking for some minimal services. Now, we can talk about the streets. Now, I understand that the condition of the streets were attributed to bad winter last year and to a bad winter the year before. In our 150-year history, I know we've had bad winters. Last year was particularly a good winter in the sense that it was relatively cold the whole winter, not a lot of freeze and thaw cycles like you had in 2013, which creates more damage to the roads. So I look and I hear that the mayor says that we're going to get into the car with the street supervisor and drive around in the spring and figure out which streets needing repair. That's not good enough. We need to have a comprehensive inventory of our streets and a plan to rebuild them in a proper fashion. How are we going to do that? That, I think, is a question that every municipality is dealing with today. There definitely has to be involvement by the state and the federal governments because cities can't simply do it alone. I think there's some common ground that cities, towns, and villages in Niagara County can get their arms around, and that needs to be explored. Whether we're going to dedicate a portion of sales tax specifically to road improvement, let's talk to Niagara Falls, North Tonawanda, let's talk to all the towns. I think that's a collaborative approach that we need to start with anyway.
Very good. Mayor, same question to you, 2 minutes.
Yes, I'm very proud of the work that we've done on the streets the last 2 years. Certainly as soon as I took office, our streets were in the worst condition that any resident had ever seen. They all told me that. And we went right to work to come up with a plan to address it. And that plan was to mill streets and repave them and to do them properly. We were able to do 8 streets last year, and then this year, with us going out to get an $800,000 grant from the New York State Department of Transportation, we were able to do twice that many streets this year. I don't think anybody has seen that number of streets paved in this city. According to our street supervisor, in his 25 years of employment, he's never seen it. So I'm very proud of the work that we were able to do by first securing the grant to have the funds so that the burden was not on our taxpayer. It was a state grant that really enabled us to do a lot more work in our city this year. I'm very proud of that. And I have to commend our streets workers. They worked so hard every day this summer paving an immense amount and really just finished up this past week. So we've corrected those streets. The streets that were paved this year, we will not have to touch for many years to come. Now, I can't address every street that has been neglected for 30 years. We tried to pick the streets that were in the most serious condition this year and do them, and we'll continue to do that. I know people are satisfied with that. We will also be working more on tree trimming and tree removal where we need to. I've been in conversations with our tree crew leader and our street superintendent, and what we're going to be doing is documenting better what trees we have taken down and getting a better plan to remove those in the worst condition that our city is seeing. I think it's something the council will need to look at as well. You know, when I was a council member, I certainly heard those questions about streets and trees, and it's something that we're committed to improving. I think I'm a problem solver, and when I see a problem, I'm ready to solve it.
Very good. Mr. Sherrie, if you would, during your rebuttal, address the tree trimming half of that question.
Yeah, let's talk about the streets first in the sense that since the mayor has assumed her position that she touts the efforts that she has made. But let's remember that she was also a councilman, that she was on the finance committee, she was chair of the council, so she had to have input with Mayor Tucker at the time on trying to deal with this issue. For those who have seen a street rebuilding, Lincoln Avenue, for example, that was completely dug up, had new sewer and water lines, and that's a project that's probably going to last for 30 years. The milling that we're doing on our streets, particularly I think the minimal milling that we did in 2014, and I don't know what happened with the asphalt then, but that is a Band-Aid approach. We're going to be doing that probably every 7 or 8 years, throwing your money down the drain.
Okay, Mayor McCaffrey, 1 minute for a final word on this topic.
Yes, well, I think Mr. Sherrie is misinformed in terms of the cost of doing the rebuild that was done on Lincoln Avenue. If we were to tally that up and do it across the city, it's simply not even in the ballpark of what we can afford. What we have done is use our money very wisely to mill down, put a very thick base coat and top coat, and I'm told by our street supervisors who've been doing this for a number of years and are experts at it, that it's going to get us many, many years. To do a full sewer and water repair might be optimal in certain instances, but that is simply not something we're able to do, and I know the council will be looking at ways to get more funding to address that in the future, but I have to commend the council for coming up with good plans with me, as well as our street supervisor, to do what we've done this year.
Okay, before we move on, we gave short shrift to the tree half of this question, and the city has a lot more trees than streets, and a smaller department to deal with them. Can you both just take 30 seconds quickly and give us an idea of how it is you plan to do that? Mr. Sherrie, if you want to go first.
I had the good fortune of being the president of the city's Parks Board under Larry Martin, a long-time park superintendent, who made it his goal to inventory and catalog every tree in the city of Lockport, I believe. I think the fact that we've let it get so far out of control, we absolutely do need to focus on tree removal because it is disrupting our sidewalks, streets, and et cetera.
Mayor, 30 seconds.
Certainly. The other thing that I can assure the public that we're doing is we're working with NYSEG and coming up with an agreement with them, which we are looking to renew our agreement. And they do come out and assist us in tree trimming, especially when it's in the way of the power line. So we're looking to have them assist us as well.
Okay, very good. Joyce has our next question.
Okay. For Mayor McCaffrey, the single biggest issue before voters here this November revolves around city finances. As you're both aware, a referendum on the ballot would fundamentally rewrite the city charter and redefine the treasurer's role at City Hall. Supporters of the referendum argue the system of financial checks and balances is broken, and the person responsible needs to be fully vetted by lawmakers to ensure they have the background that prepares them for such a job. Those who oppose the treasurer's office changes note the person entrusted with keeping tabs on taxpayer money should be accountable directly to the taxpayers themselves and should not be a political appointee or a patronage hire by the mayor. You are both on record supporting opposite sides of this debate. Tell us why.
And that question's for me, correct? Yes. The reason I support the referendum to be passed by the voters is very clear. We had a system that was broken. It was broken, and it was told to us very clearly by the comptroller's office that our accounting was poor, our reporting was poor, that we couldn't make decisions based on the financials that were in front of us. When you think about it, we have a $30 million corporation. We have to rely on the numbers that they're right. We need to make sure that our reporting is done properly, accurately, and on time every month, without question. That was not the case. We have had in the past an elected official who's in charge completely of that entire process. If there's a breakdown in that process, there's nowhere to go except to wait till the next election 4 years later, and you could have the same situation come up again. The criteria right now for treasurer is to be a city resident and 18 years old. There's no financial background experience that's required. In my opinion, you kind of need to take the people out of it and say 10 years from now, it's all new people, you don't know who's in place. Would you want a person with absolutely no experience getting elected because they're a friendly person and the voters elect them in charge of a $30 million corporation? To me, that does not make sense. I think we have to have a system where we maintain an independent treasurer who is the collector of taxes, and that's what we're implementing with this referendum, and have a person who has the experience, the knowledge, and the ability to do the reporting and the management of a $30 million corporation and do that properly. We get requests for information all the time from New York State. They can't be ignored. They must be done, and it's got to be done right. And we have to have that accountability within City Hall to make sure it's done. I think this referendum must pass if people want to see the financial situation of the city stabilized going forward.
I disagree with that position, and it's not because Mike White is the current city treasurer or that Sue Mawhinney is a Democrat, running as a Democrat for that position. I think the decision to make the charter change was really a sham. The mayor appointed a 3-person committee to investigate and debate, I guess, amongst themselves, whether the treasurer duties should be altered. I tried to attend those meetings. I was asked to leave. I did that on the second occasion. I was asked to leave. From my information, they did not interview Mike White. They did not interview the last city treasurer for 28 years, and that was Jim Afstrath. What I see is that a political decision was made that we're going to go and make the current treasurer the scapegoat for the financial condition of the city, and we're going to go and put in place someone who reports only to the mayor. I trust the voters to make the right decision on who they should elect for city treasurer. I trust them. I don't want one person in office making that decision, making that determination for everyone. It really does deserve to be an independent elected position and stay that way. When the cash shortfall was discovered, the city hired Bonadillo and Company to investigate how come, why didn't they know about it, and so forth. Bonadillo said 2 things. One, lack of communication. The mayor at that time was not communicating at all with the city treasurer. And the second thing was staffing. The staffing level in the office was undermanned, and therefore that's why you didn't get the reports that you wanted. Not because the system doesn't work, it's because those in charge of the system broke it.
Mayor, you have 1 minute for a rebuttal.
First, I'd like to say the members from the Common Council who went to study the treasurer's duties and any changes to be made, they were not appointed by me. There was a council meeting where the council members said, we need to look at this, and we believe some of us should be on that committee, and they self-appointed themselves. It was not appointed by me. I did see Mr. Sherrie come into one of the meetings. I did not see him get asked to leave. I suppose that could have happened. I was not there for that. I would also like to say that the director of finance that has been hired was interviewed by me as well as the council. That decision was a joint decision. That person reports to me and the council. He reports monthly with all of the financial information and all of the data that's being requested by the Common Council. I wanted to set that straight. Lumsden and McCormick was our outside budget consultant who came to me in 2013 and said, you have no fund balance. It took an outside budget consultant to tell me that as a council member. That should never happen. We need to get that information from within City Hall. This allows us to do that.
Mr. Sherrie, 1 minute to close up on the topic.
You know, the fact there was a depletion of the fund balances, I don't think should have been such a surprise to the mayor or to the council, particularly those serving back to 2012. It's been documented, it was reported that the budgeting process at that time basically involved making up figures so the expenditures and the revenues would meet, so we didn't have a property tax rate increase during election years. Folks, that's not how you run a major $30 million plus corporation. You don't let politics get into that. And that's one of the reasons I'm running for office. We can talk about the director of finance position, why I think that was created in the wrong order, that we should have first had the vote on the charter change, because if that goes down, Mr. Schrader's doing duties that he legally cannot perform.
Okay, as it so happens, our very next question is just about that. We've discussed the role of the treasurer. Let's talk about the other half of the equation, the city's new director of finance. It's a position created just this year, and the person filling that role makes nearly $100,000 per year. And yet, if voters turn down this referendum redefining the treasurer's job duties, there will essentially be two people in City Hall doing the same thing. What is your vision for this position, both if the referendum passes and if it fails? Specifically, if it were to fail, would you advocate for eliminating the director of finance position? That question goes first to you, Mr. Sherrie.
One of the problems that being a candidate for office has is they're not necessarily have access to the information to fully examine a situation. For me to comment on what I would do with Mr. Schrader should I win an election, I don't think that's necessarily proper at this point in time. We're going to listen to what the voters say, and if they determine they want the independently elected city treasurer, so be it. Then we're going to have to figure out, okay, is there some other function that Mr. Schrader can perform? Now, one of the things that this administration has done quite frequently is hire individuals, managers on personal service contracts. Mr. Schrader was not hired on a personal service contract. I think probably the one who broke the chain, perhaps after I raised that issue at a council meeting. But the resolution that was approved hiring him says that his employment and his terms of employment cannot be changed other than by council resolution. So should I become mayor in January 1st, but we have a Republican council, then if I wanted to have the free hand that other mayors would have had in the past where people serve at the pleasure of the mayor, I don't have that. My hands are tied, and the taxpayers are the ones that lose out.
Mayor McCaffrey.
First thing I want to say is regardless of what party the council members are, I think if you present clear, accurate information that's compelling and explains the need for a position or a need for any action by the council, I think if you present that and you make it clear that this is in the betterment of the city, regardless of the partisanship of who's on the council, I think people will respect that and make the right decision. I think our council has done that. We have a bipartisan council right now, 4-2, and in many instances, there are people on both sides of the parties who are voting to do, in my opinion, what they think is the right thing for the city. I want to make this point very clear. The duties that are being removed in the referendum have not been done by our current city treasurer. He has not prepared the monthly reports. He has not prepared the quarterly reports. If he were to try to argue to keep those duties going forward, that would be a new thing. Previously, they were done by the city's accountant/auditor. They are now being done by the director of finance. It's being done well right now. I'm not getting calls from Albany saying something's not in on time. We're finding out in advance what needs to be done, and it's being done. I very strongly support the work that Scott's doing. He has taken over doing the budget for the city. We're saving the money that we had to pay previously an outside budget consultant. And I will say that he's worth every penny. When you see the amount of work that he's putting in to correct the city's finances and our budget issues, I couldn't be happier knowing that we have an extremely competent person in City Hall every day helping us make those decisions. When we went to hire him, I asked Lumsden and McCormick to come up with criteria of what they thought was important in a person to work in that capacity. They helped me vet the candidates. I had never met Scott Schrader before. I didn't know anything about him. They said to me, this individual has the most governmental, municipal accounting experience needed, and he'll do the job for you, and he is.
Okay, Mr. Sherrie, then 1 minute for a rebuttal, please.
Well, let's be fair. Mr. Schrader does not have an accounting degree. He does not have a degree in business finance. And if we're going to be honest a little bit further, we're going to say that the accountant position in the city treasurer's office was vacant for 2 years, and that the person moving into the auditor or accountant person was thrown into the job really without any training, problems that many city departments have. And again, I understand Mr. Schrader is maybe doing some functions. I worked for a labor union for 28 years. I taught my staff how to analyze municipal budgets. I taught my staff how you go and determine property tax rates and so forth. I don't have a finance degree. The last thing that I would do is rely on me and my educational background to give the right answers. You need to have people specifically trained for those functions.
Mayor McCaffrey, 1 minute for a final word on the topic.
Mr. Schrader has been fully trained for that. He's worked in several municipalities, has over 20 years of experience, and I'm seeing every day, and the council is seeing, and if anybody would like more information, call their council member. They will hear specifically in finance meetings that we are getting very good information, accurately, on time, good guidance, good leadership, and as a result, the council can make good decisions.
Okay, Joyce with our next question.
Question goes first to Mayor McCaffrey. Perhaps the single biggest question a local politician anywhere has to answer is how to balance providing services that taxpayers say they want with the taxes they don't want. That becomes an even bigger problem in a city like Lockport with an aging and shrinking population. The reality is, if you're going to maintain or increase services, taxes will have to go up. If you're going to cut taxes, you will also have to cut services. Our question is simple. If you're elected mayor, what gives?
Good question. I think you can look back at the last year and look at some of the decisions that we had to make, and it was a balancing act. For us to have a balanced budget for the last 2 years, and I'd like to point out that we took a deficit and have brought it to stabilization and now a small surplus. That was no small feat. We did have to have employee reductions. We did have to raise taxes. But I can say going forward into 2016, I just released our proposed budget for 2016. We're looking at a very small tax increase and maintaining the services that we have. I think what's important in doing that is having the information and making the decisions in advance so that the budget makes sense and those services are protected. I'd like to take for a moment the youth department. We previously had 2 full-time staff working 12 months a year. That was expensive for the city. 9 or 10 of those months, our kids are in school. The council and I discussed it at great length and said, look, that's 10 months of the year that we're paying a salary to 2 people that really we could put that into another service. I don't think we're maximizing the value of that service to our residents. What we were able to do is make it a summer youth program and connect with nonprofits in the city and in our community and pull together a stronger youth program for our summer without the burden of the expense of 10 months of the year when our kids are in school. I think that's the kind of decision making that our residents expect. They expect us to put the money in the value of services that impacts them and to make sure that we're doing it with common sense decisions. In my opinion, we did that. I'm proud of that. I think the residents are very happy with it. We also brought Game Changers this year, which was a Friday night basketball program at no cost to city residents. I think the more we bring in services and coordinate, I know numerous people beyond Lockport who want to bring services to Lockport at no cost to our residents. To have a basketball Friday night program for our youth this summer, I think was a great way for our residents to get the maximum value without paying for it at all.
Thank you. Mr. Sherrie.
Joyce, the short answer to your question is it's going to be extremely difficult. I think we need to all realize that Lockport really is a tale of two cities. We have a population where 20% live below the poverty line. We have over half of our households live on an annual income of less than $40,000. That's basically two parents, mom and a dad, working minimum wage jobs, trying to take care of the house, educate the children, perhaps care for elderly parents. Hitting them with another property tax increase is really unacceptable for them. They don't have the money. They haven't had a raise in their income in 15 years. Until we start giving folks the money that can live in a sustainable fashion, we're going to have a problem. Some would say we have to grow the city's tax base in order to solve the revenue problem. I think that's more of a cliche, because unless you're adding properties onto the tax rolls or increasing the assessed valuation, you're really not going to increase your revenues. I think our projected revenues in the 2016 budget, I should say the projected assessed valuation of a property is less next year than it was for 2015. So you need to do some really unique and interesting things. I don't know if the current city treasurer is in the audience. I don't know if Ms. Mawini is in the office, but here's the message. Pack your bag, because if I'm elected on November 3rd, November 5th, we're going to go to Albany. We're going to knock on doors there. We're going to talk about specific things that city needs. And when we get done, we're going to end up going to Washington. So have your bags packed, please.
Mayor McCaffrey, 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Sounds like Mr. Sherrie has a junket planned. I would like to say I've brought in more grant money to the city in the last year and a half than we've seen in many, many years. We were able to get a SAFER grant, which enables us to pay for one full-time firefighter that really is saving the taxpayers that amount every year. It's $108,000 for 2 years. That's a direct savings to our taxpayers. That's a firefighter that we would have had working, and now the federal government is paying for that. We received over $128,000 in equipment from the federal government for our fire department this year. We have numerous police grants coming in. The Flight of Five is $1.3 million. Now, granted, that's not supplanting tax money, that's above and beyond, but we're bringing in more grant money to assist in our homeowners so that they don't bear the burden of our services. The $800,000 DOT grant, again, I'll be tallying that up in the next days for our residents to see, but I think making those kind of decisions and getting the state and federal resources to our city is what I've done and I'll continue to do.
Mr. Sherrie, you have 1 minute to close up the topic.
I think a lot of the deliverance of those either state or federal grants had been in the works for probably more than a year, probably more than 2 years. The mayor calls attention to the SAFE Act, which allowed the city to return one firefighter to active duty. Remembering that 9 firefighters were laid off in 2014, the city had the option to go and apply for a SAFE grant that would have brought 4 of the firefighters back together, or back to work. There was the decision made not to do that. The mayor broke the tie in not to go and ask to bring 4 firefighters back. We're only going to do 1. I think if we ask ourselves, why would that ever happen? I think there's probably more politics involved in that than there is good public policy.
Okay, we have one question left before we reach the intermission of this evening's program, and we want to take a little time to get to know you, lighten the mood a little bit. So we're going to do that now. There's a well-known idiom in politics. All politics is local. I'm sure with 2 people running to be mayor of a small city like this, that you know that better than most. Since this race is going to be won or lost largely based on retail politics, we thought it would make a little sense to help voters get to know you as people a little bit better. So for this round of questioning, no rebuttals, just quick answers, whatever comes to your mind first, and we'll call it the lightning round. Mr. Sherrie, first to you. What's your favorite restaurant?
What's my favorite? Seamus.
Mayor?
I have a three-way tie. Molinaro's, Seamus, and Americano.
Okay.
Love
Mayor, what was the last book you read?
The last book I read, I'm in a book club. Oh gosh, I wish a book club member was with me tonight. I'm trying to think. Oh, it was Girl on a Train, about an English girl who's on a train and a murder mystery.
All right. Mr. Sherrie, I'm going to guess it's not Girl on a Train for you, but what's your question? Or what's the last book?
The last book that I got completely through was The Audacity of Hope by Barack Obama.
All right. Favorite movie, Mr. Sherrie?
Godfather 2.
Casablanca.
All right. What annual
you're not that
Lockport
old.
event do you most look forward to attending, Mayor?
Oh, Lockport events. This past year, the Sesquicentennial was amazing. I love the Palace shows in the summer. Definitely their Broadway show every summer is usually my favorite.
Mr. Sherrie, favorite Lockport event?
I think the favorite's got to be the Arts and Craft Festival on Main Street.
All right. What was the last time you left the Lockport area, and what was the reason, Mr. Sherrie?
Last time I moved out of Lockport?
No, you left the Lockport area.
I left the Lockport area when I went to college in the Midwest, and when I graduated there, I moved back to Western New York because of an illness in my family.
I think actually, to be fair, we were thinking more like the last time you drove out of here.
Oh. Well, I've been retired for the almost a year, so it isn't daily. Probably 2 weeks ago.
All right. Mayor, last time you drove out of the Lockport area. Why
Last
was
night
it?
I drove to my son's basketball game down at St. Mary's of Lancaster.
Okay. And what political figure do you most admire, Mayor McCaffrey?
Oh, political figure. I would say Winston Churchill, maybe. What he did in World War II, amazing.
All right. Mr. Sherrie, same question.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He is a president who is still vilified by his social and economic class. His philosophy of government was, when things are bad, you have to experiment, you have to try something, and if that doesn't work, put it aside, try something else. He's my favorite president.
All right, that will bring us to intermission. We'll do 5 or 10 minutes or so if members of our audience want to get up and stretch their legs, and we'll be back for the second half of the program. Okay, the seventh question of tonight's program goes first to Mayor McCaffrey, and it is this. Like much of the Rust Belt, Lockport has a rich history of industrial productivity, but over the decades as those businesses have closed or moved, increasingly the legacy left behind is problematic. The city has more than 20 brownfields. What effects do you see these blighted properties having on the city, and what can be done about it? Mayor, 2 minutes.
Yes, actually I was on the phone today with our contact in Albany who is helping us go through the financial restructuring board process. And one of the discussions we've had is around abandoned properties in Lockport, brownfields, and old industrial buildings. That was exactly what I was talking about to him today at 4 o'clock. I am looking forward to that process where representatives in Albany are analyzing the city's infrastructure, our operations, and trying to help us find ways to be more efficient, and in this case, to spur development and address some age-old problems that we have with old buildings, contamination, and infrastructure. One of the things I'm looking forward to is getting information from him in the coming weeks about recommendations and possibly grant money that will be coming to the city of Lockport for specifically those purposes. I had that conversation a couple hours ago, and it's something that I've kept Albany very informed of, and I'm looking forward to getting some assistance from them. I think we've had the Brownfield Opportunity Study. That's been done in the city. We've been able to secure additional money from New York State to get that study done and to continue to look at ways to address our old industrial properties that require some improvement in either demolition, historic renovation, or a variety of those options. I look forward to having the community more involved in those discussions. I think that's an important aspect, but I think looking forward to assistance from Albany is something that I'm hopeful we'll get.
Okay. Mr. Sherrie, 2 minutes on the same question.
I think toxic properties or are of great concern to the city. I think we owe a debt of thanks to Shirley Nichols for her work with the DEC in Lowertown and being so vigilant to try to move the state and move the federal government, EPA, into some of the reclamation projects that are going on down there. Finally, I think that's an area that has really been patient far too long, and the fact that we've seen some movement, thank goodness that we have seen that. We need to do more. I understand that when it comes to abandoned and neglected properties, including industrial sites, that there's only so much the local government can do, because perhaps, well, most likely what we need is perhaps stronger state laws that we can hold absentee landlords responsible, particularly the corporations who quickly move out of town, abandon the property, declare bankruptcy, change their corporation structure, whatever they do, whatever gimmicks they do to get out from fulfilling their responsibilities of being a good corporate citizen. I think we need to hold their feet to the fire too. Not an easy question on dealing with that, but something that we definitely need to be vigilant about going forward.
Mayor, 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Yes, I think the other thing that goes along with this topic is increased investment in our city from other businesses and developers who maybe look at that site and look at an opportunity for our city to either have another industry there or another business. And I think looking at new business development kind of goes hand in hand with that. And I'm happy to say that we have had new business development in the city in recent years. Just this past year, we've had Iskolo Development, who's a premier developer from Buffalo, who owns the Electric Tower building, is doing hotels in Amherst. They're investing in the city of Lockport. That is a new thing for us. We're thrilled to have them. They're investing in 57 Canal Street. They recently bought the old post office, and I know they're interested in other properties in the city. We're hopeful to continue to cultivate a good relationship with them so that they can see that Lockport is a good place to do business, to purchase historic buildings, and to renovate them and have a good business in the city of Lockport.
Mr. Sherrie, 1 minute.
I was personally pleased to see Truck Industries come into the city of Lockport and bring a significant number of good-paying jobs with them. It is that type of employment, sustainable wages, that are really going to move our city ahead of the curve. I'm all for bringing in all types of business opportunities and investment into the city of Lockport. But that perhaps does not generate much employment or does not generate the sustainable wages or benefits that we need in order to prosper as a community, that's fine, but that's not the answer to our problems. I think everyone who's involved in economic development knows that if you're going to do something with downtown, you got to make sure that you have shoppers downtown. If there isn't shoppers, if there isn't money downtown, your investors are not going to be there. That's something that we need to re-energize.
Before we move on that topic, we talked a lot about the business side of that, but there's a health side, a public health side to this question as well. What impact do you believe the environmental legacy in these properties have had on the health of the community? I'll give you both 60 seconds to address that. Mayor, please.
Yeah, that's something that I know health advocates have been studying, and I think it's something they'll continue to study. I was happy that the EPA was able to come in this year and purchase the 5 homes on Water Street so that those residents could be relocated. The EPA and the DEC have been heavily involved in cleanup activities in the city of Lockport over the last few years. In fact, one of the DEC representatives said to me, "This is the fastest we move. We don't move any faster than this." By going in, purchasing those homes, doing the cleanup of the Flint Coat building on Mill Street. There's also the transit cleanup at NYSEG, which should be wrapping up in the coming months. They've been spending an enormous amount of money to do cleanup in the city. And in terms of the health issues, I think it's something we need more information on. I don't have any health studies across my desk right now indicating a specific linkage, but I'm sure it's something that we need more studies on and more information to go forward. It's something that I'll be working closely with the Niagara County Health Department on.
Mr. Sherrie, the same question to you.
I agree. I think the jury is still out on what long-term health effects the residents, both now and in the past, have suffered from the location or the proximity to those industrial properties. That's unfortunate, and I would join the mayor in urging that we do as many health-related or medical studies for that population as we can. Again, it's a tough issue, and whatever we have to do, whatever we can do to mitigate the condition that people in those proximity to those properties, we must do it.
Very good. Joyce, our next question.
For this round of questioning, we want to get at your backgrounds as they relate to city government. So we're going to ask each of you a direct question in this round. After that, we will open it up to your rebuttals on the general topic of your opponent's experience. Meaning, I have a question that is specifically for Mayor McCaffrey about her background, and one for you, Mr. Sherrie, that is about yours. Mayor McCaffrey, you have fairly pointed out that many of the problems facing the city find their origins under the prior administration, but you were Common Council president before you were mayor, and it's also fair to ask whether you could have done more in that capacity to prevent these problems from happening. What responsibility do you bear for the city's present financial state?
Sure. I think when I was on the council, the one thing that if I could do differently would maybe be to ask more questions and maybe be a little bit trusting of the information that was put in front of me. I know that the Common Council members and I were pretty trusting of what was brought forward to us. And I do think there was a point where things started to not add up, and the first budget was one of those instances for me. When that was completed, I urged my Common Council co-workers to go to get an RFP for an outside budget consultant. I was dissatisfied with what I had seen, and we did that. But I do think, in summary, kind of in retrospect, we were trusting. We thought that the elected officials who were there all day, which was the former mayor and the former treasurer, or the treasurer, they're there 5 days a week doing the work of the city. The council members come in for council meetings and committee meetings. We're relying on them to know the day-to-day condition of the city. And I think we were true trusting.
Mr. Sherrie, you worked as a negotiator for a public sector union, CSEA, which has a unit here in the city of Lockport. How can voters be sure you're running to be their advocate and not as a tool of municipal unions hoping to get more for their members?
In my 28 years working for CSEA, it probably didn't go a week without someone claiming that, labor unions are special interest, again, only out for themselves. Most of the time when I would hear those claims or those criticisms, it would come from segments or from people who are more interested in making sure that our city, our state, our country's working families had low-wage or low-benefit jobs. I think the need for labor unions today is as great as in the late 1800s, lest we go back to have workplaces that look like that. About my ability to be fair and equitable in dealings with unions and the taxpayers, that's the nature of public sector bargaining today. I don't think my experience at the table or supervising negotiations for 200 towns, cities, villages, and counties is a hindrance to me. I think that helps me. I think I've seen every management proposal cross my desk. I've seen every union proposal cross my desk. I think understanding what civil service law says about that, I think understanding what it takes to bring the shareholders together and have common ground solutions, I think that is something that I uniquely bring to the table, and I think that's going to help the city going forward.
By my sheet here, I see that Mayor McCaffrey gets the final word on this. So, Mr. Sherrie, I'll give it to you first. 60 seconds to talk about your opponent's background.
Ann McCaffrey is a wonderful lady. There is no differences between herself and me. If there are differences, those are political. And that's not unusual because I don't know if the audience knows this, but she and I both have a bachelor's degree in political science. I don't think that has happened in a mayoral campaign in the state ever. I think the important question that was asked, and I didn't hear the answer, the question was, Mayor, did you accept personal responsibility for what happened before? I did not hear a yes or no answer.
Mayor, 1 minute, final word on the topic.
Yeah, I think the thing that Mr. Sherrie is talking about the most tonight, and I've, in all of his discussions on the campaign, has been coming back to his union experience. That's been the cornerstone of his entire campaign. I think there is more to the city of Lockport than, this is not a one-issue campaign. There's a lot to this city that needs to be addressed. And I think, I guess the question that people have asked me the most is how can somebody who was sitting on the opposite side of the table for that many years, whose entire goal was to get as much as he could for his membership, now flip roles and try to protect the taxpayer, people who are in poverty, address social issues, bring businesses in. How can you flip that and now all of a sudden sit on the other side and look out for the taxpayer when his entire perspective has been protecting union membership's rights? That's been the biggest question people have asked me, and I think that remains to be seen. I have not heard anything about how he's going to be able to switch gears and protect our taxpayers.
Okay, we will move on to the next topic. And Mayor, this question goes first to you. We've spoken about balancing services with the tax burden in general, but one such decision has sparked a great deal of debate in Lockport. The city has shuttered its in-house ambulance service. Now, when a city resident calls 911, the EMTs who arrive work for a private for-profit company. But frequently, the city's fire department arrives on those calls as well. The private company bills at a higher rate than the city did, but the decision was billed to taxpayers as one that would save money. What's your view of the city's present ambulance service? And if you're elected, would you consider restoring in-house EMT duties to Lockport's fire department, or would you continue with Twin Cities?
The first answer to that is, what would the cost to the city of Lockport be if we return to city-paid ambulance? And the answer is $750,000 per year impact on our budget. And that's about a 7.5% tax increase above and beyond what we have right now. I'm hearing from residents that they're very happy with the new ambulance service. I'm hearing that they're very happy that their taxes didn't go up an additional 7.5% last year. In terms of the revenue that was brought in, it was very clearly stated to the Common Council and I when we reviewed all of the information that approximately 80% of the city's ambulance calls are for individuals who receive Medicaid and Medicare insurance. There is no ability for municipality to bill a different rate. The rate for Medicaid and Medicare is set by the federal government. There is no way to change that rate. That's the same for every provider, whether it's the city of Lockport or Twin City. So the suggestion has been made that by increasing those rates, we could bring in more revenue. You could only affect the revenue of 20% of those rates. That simply would not cover the increase in cost to the city of Lockport. The other thing that I think has been stated to me by many residents that they're happy with is when the ambulance comes now, they're able to request what hospital they want to go to. And they can get a ride to and out of Lockport Hospital if that's their desire. And the other thing that I think is a great benefit is in the past we had 2 ambulances. That was it. If there was a third or a fourth or a fifth call, the city of Lockport could not respond. We simply did not have the resources. That would immediately go to mutual aid, and we'd be relying on one of our volunteer agencies neighboring communities to provide that to the city. With Twin City Ambulance, we don't need to rely on a neighboring community. If there's an increase in demand, they shift their resources here. They have dozens of ambulances in the community surrounding our area, and they're able to respond to that, and I know residents are happy with that.
Mr. Sherrie, the question to you for 2 minutes.
I think the decision to mothball the city's ambulance service was done premature, and unfortunately it's done now. I think the question asked to should it be reinstated, that's something that I would like to see thrown to a citizens advisory committee that has expertise and medical expertise and representation from the fire chief, the firefighters themselves, financial people, the community, and so forth, to see 2 things. Does the citizens want a city-provided ambulance service again? And 2, can we afford that? Can we afford that service? Now, I'm going to disagree with the mayor's figures here when it comes to what that service cost us. The personnel costs for both Unit 1 and Unit 2 were about $380,000 a year. If you add to that the cost of the billing clerk, the medical supplies, the fuel, and all of the other incidentals, you're going to add another $160,000 to that figure. That's going to take you a little bit over $500,000 in cost, and the fact that the city was generating revenues of about $700,000 a year. So it wasn't a bleed the city dry type of operation. It was probably break even or maybe even a little bit profitable. Where my figures differ and the mayor's differ is that she is going to attribute all of the overtime in the fire department to the ambulance service. That's not reality. It wasn't the ambulance service did not generate the overtime. The overtime was generated by a lack of manpower, operating a fire department that had less than the required staffing levels, probably going back to 2010. So I think the issue of reinstating the service is something that needs to be explored, and whether we can afford it, examined as well. I'm not thrilled with Twin Cities yet, mostly because all the information, whether they're service delays and citizen complaints or whatever, all those go to the mayor. And it's the mayor's office that decides who to release that information to. That's not the transparency that I'd like to see.
Mayor McCaffrey, you have 1 minute for a rebuttal.
First, I'd like to say that we have a medical director on the fire board, so I'm very pleased that I've made that appointment, and that's going extremely well. The facts that Mr. Sherrie just presented couldn't be farther from the truth. The $750,000 is what it would cost the city above and beyond the billing. It would be a $1.25 million cost for the city to get back into the ambulance business. We were receiving about $500,000 a year, plus or minus a little bit. I just had to submit to Albany the cost of what that was. Those were the figures I gave. They double checked it. That's accurate. Last year, and this was very widely reported, the city was on track to spend $1 million in overtime in the ambulance department. This year, we're on track to spend $300,000 in overtime. There's your difference right there, $700,000. By decreasing minimum manning, by getting out of the ambulance business, it enabled us to decrease that cost. There's no question that $750,000 is the cost of getting back into the ambulance. No question.
Mr. Sherrie, you have 1 minute to wrap up the topic.
Again, I think it's disingenuous to attribute all of the overtime costs to the ambulance service because it just doesn't work out that way. I think part of the cost to reinstate the ambulance service, the mayor includes in her calculation, I think, replacing the vehicles, Unit 1 and Unit 2. And I think if we're going to go and say we're going to go out and pay cash for a brand new vehicle or 2 brand new vehicles, yeah, you're gonna have higher costs than what I said, but that's not the way you invest in vehicles, particularly something as complicated as the ambulance services. Those are the things that you go and you finance long term. So spread the cost out. I still think that the service is viable, and it's something that we need to have citizen input on and a little bit or a lot more research.
Okay, Joyce, our next question.
Can I respond to that?
If you both want to do 30 seconds more, I'm happy to do it, but he gets the final word on that topic.
I would just like to state those numbers that I gave do not include the replacement cost of purchasing new ambulances. Absolutely not.
Final word, Roger?
Then I would want to sit down with you then and compare figures that I got relative to how you calculate the payroll costs and the additional costs, because they're not anything close to what you're...
I'd be happy to do that.
Very good.
Okay, Joyce, next question.
Okay. This question is for both candidates. To Mr. Sherrie first. As you are both no doubt aware, there has been a long simmering dispute between the administration at Eastern Niagara Hospital, Lockport, and the workforce, particularly nurses and their advocates. Given how strongly people feel about maintaining the hospital as both the city's second largest employer and as an important part of the fabric of the community, do you view it as part of the mayor's job to intercede in this situation, even though the hospital is a private institution?
That's a good question. And I'm glad that you brought that issue to the attention of the audience here tonight and the voters, because I think there is some real risk to the viability, the future viability of our hospital. And yes, there is a great deal of concern about the direction and how the the facility is being operated by many of the employees, particularly the professional nurses, are concerned and have concerns. One of their concerns is they can't get any information, or they can't even get in and talk to the board of directors. The board of directors, I think, were probably secret until relatively recently, and I don't know that anyone has seen a copy of their board of director rules, their bylaws and laws of the government. I don't know that anyone has seen that. I think the mayor, as the political leader of the city, needs to go and be at the forefront of that issue or that battle or that concern. Now, I know Mayor McCaffrey has written a communication to the CEO, and probably I think she copied Mr. Moscato, who is the chair of the board, and basically talked about you need to be more open and more transparent with the community. I just hope that happens. I haven't seen it yet.
Mayor, 2 minutes for you.
Yes, this issue has been brought to me on several occasions, and I've been very communicative with both sides, and I think that's important. The first thing that I did was go back to look at the city's history with the hospital. There was a time, and it's important for the residents to know, where the city hospital was part of the city of Lockport. It was an actual department maybe 30 years ago or so, and there was a time where the city council decided to allow that to become a not-for-profit corporation, and there was an agreement for those terms. I've looked back to review what those terms were, how the arrangement was made, and what the status of it is right now. I've been meeting with both sides. I've met with the individuals who are part of Save Eastern Niagara Hospital to listen to their concerns. They've expressed those to me on several occasions. I have regular communication with them, and I've also met with the board of directors, the hospital administrator, to express to them the concerns that this group has. I'm hopeful that by my position that I'll be able to bring more transparency, bring more openness, and hopefully get the board to understand the concerns that this group has. I think it's important that they're listened to. Our hospital's viability is of utmost importance to this city. I cannot imagine having a city without a viable, strong hospital. It's absolutely critical. I'll be continuing to work with both sides for them to come together and hopefully get a better understanding of each other's needs.
Mr. Sherrie, 1 minute.
I agree 100%. My only comment would be, I hope we don't let politics get in the middle of this discussion, because the viability of the hospital is just too important to this community. And we know that there's politics involved in a lot of things, and I would assume some of the participants, some of the members of the board of directors have political influence or connection or whatever, but I'm confident that this mayor is not going to let politics interfere with the survival of that hospital, well-being of our residents, and the well-being of the workers, too.
Mayor McCaffrey, a minute to close out the topic.
Yeah, it's frustrating to me to continue to hear that politics is the driving force of decision-making. That's not. I'm trying to do what I can for the betterment of this city. And that involves getting people together and making decisions that will promote a stronger Lockport. And sometimes it's public policy, sometimes it takes communication, sometimes it's problem solving. But Mr. Sherrie keeps talking about politics, and maybe that's the world he comes from. That's not the world I'm living in. I'm trying to do my best every day for the residents of this city, and I'll continue to do that.
Very good. I would remind our audience here at the Palace, we're hoping to hold applause till the end of the evening. The next question goes first to you, Mayor. The city's mayor is the elected leader, of course, but the position is also a very public place for residents to lodge complaints and to place blame, even when what's wrong has nothing to do with the mayor and it's not the mayor's fault. The yearly salary is, I believe, $42,500. Our question to both of you is fairly simple. Knowing all of the challenges, for that amount of money, is this job even worth it? 2 minutes.
I will say this job is worth it to me because I care about this city. My family's had a business here for 5 generations. My great-great-grandfather came to Lockport in 1865 and had a brewery on Chestnut Street. We've had a family business in this city for years and years. It's critical to me that our city be protected, that our tax dollars be protected, and that we have the leadership that our city needs at this pivotal time to take us forward, not backward. I believe that that's why I'm running for mayor. That's what's important to me. I'll continue to use all of the resources available to me. I am not in this position for the money. I'm in it for the betterment of this city. I've had 20 years of work experience in Buffalo. I could certainly take my experience and my education and get a much higher paying job somewhere else with probably a lot less stress. But I continue every day to put in my full effort because this city matters to me, it matters to my family, it matters to my 3 children who I would love to stay in Lockport when they grow up and have a city that they can feel proud of and call home. That's why I'm doing this.
All right. Mr. Sherrie, the same question goes to you. $42,500 a year. Is this job worth it?
Thank you for telling me that. I didn't know what the pay was on that. That's interesting. One of the questions that I get when I've been knocking on the hundreds and hundreds of doors since this summer is the voters ask, what, are you crazy? Have your head examined? And I say, no. And similar to the mayor, I'm doing this because I care so much about Lockport. I have only one of my children in the area, and that's just recently. I want to have a community that works for everybody, not just for some, not just for in some parts of the city. It is the hardest job, and I'm not going to disagree with that. But when I made the commitment to run, I said I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I know it's going to be 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week. That's a commitment that I made to myself and to the community that I will give it my best shot. I'm hoping in 4 years that we're on the right track and that we have seen leaders develop either from the council or from the community, and I can get on with my retirement. I'm going to be 64 next year, or next week, and this is not something I necessarily aspired to, but it's in my heart to do what's best for the community, just as it is for the mayor.
All right. I will say that certainly there's the option for a rebuttal there if you want it, Mayor, but you both seem to be pretty upbeat at the end of that, so I'm content moving to the next question if you both are. Okay. Then we will ask our final question of the evening. Joyce, go ahead.
As it happens, both of you hold degrees in political science, as Mr. Sherrie noted. Fairly or not, the perception is that all politicians are looking to move up the ladder. Do either of you harbor ambitions for higher office? And should you win, would either of you be willing right now to rule out a run for higher office before your mayoral term ends? The question is for you, Mr. Sherrie.
I think I basically answered that. I don't think anyone is interested in promoting a 64-year-old individual or the voters necessarily voting for a 64-year-old individual at a higher office. I have no interest in seeking a higher office. I have no interest in being mayor for 2, 3, 4 terms. I want to get the job done. That's my sole motivation for seeking the position. As far as both having political science degrees, there is one observation, Mayor, that I would make is that there was a class on how campaign lawn signs don't vote. I don't know if you were there that day.
Mayor McCaffrey, 2 minutes for you.
A group that maybe is. One thing I'll say about campaign lawn signs, I think they show the momentum of a group that maybe is interested in a particular candidate. In terms of running for another office, that's not something that I would be considering in the near future. What I'm looking at is when I make a decision about what I'm doing for work or for my career or in politics or in government, I look at the needs of my family at a given time. I have a son who's in high school. It's very important for me that I'm around for his years of high school. I have no desire to be commuting somewhere far away that would inhibit my ability to be a mom. and that's really important to me. I have 3 kids, 1 in high school, 2 in college. It's a privilege for me to be the mayor. It's extremely difficult, and it's extremely rewarding, and it's very humbling. And it's an honor and a privilege, and I appreciate that ability to serve and be a public servant to our city every day. I have no desire to do something different in the next 4 years.
Very good. Joyce? Okay, I'll ask a quick follow-up during the rebuttal round. Mr. Sherrie, during your 1 minute, tell us, 4 years as mayor, is that enough time, too much, not enough? 60 seconds.
Well, I hope it's enough. If you were looking for some declination of being interested in further office, or you're looking for something definite, I will give that to you. Is 4 years enough? I hope it's enough, Eric. I think that, again, focusing in as much as we can, and I think there will be some new blood, some new faces on Common Council. I think you're going to see progress made. The only thing that would ever make me step back and rethink things is if we were on the verge of a major breakthrough, if we had a huge industry coming into town that required some hands-on services, then someone might be able to say, you really should stay on and handle that. I don't see that ever happening. Again, 4 years, I'm willing to commit as much as my heart and soul as I can to the job, and hopefully make some progress.
Mayor McCaffrey, 1 minute to close that up.
Yes, I mean, I think, as I said, being mayor is very humbling. It's very rewarding. I'm very committed to what I'm doing. I think 4 years for me is the right amount of time. I feel like I've had 2 years to make major changes that were required in this city to stabilize our city and to put us in a position to prosper and to move forward. I feel like 4 years is what I'm going to need to continue that path and make sure that we don't go backwards. You know, last year we really were on the verge of serious financial crisis, and it would be devastating to see bad decisions get us back into that position. If I'm here for 4 years, I will not allow that to happen. I think 4 years is what's going to be needed to get us out of this fiscal stress, to make sure that our city is stabilized, to put us on a path for prosperity where businesses want to come, and where our tourism and our ice arena and all the assets that we're establishing in this city are allowed to multiply and bring more businesses in to keep our city on the right path.
Okay, that will conclude our questioning portion of tonight's debate, but you both have the opportunity for a closing statement. We flip the coin to see who got to go first and last. Mayor, you get to go first. Mr. Sherrie, you get to go last. 3 minutes on the clock for each of you. Mayor McCaffrey, your closing statement, please.
Certainly. You know, as I said, I'm thrilled to be the mayor. I feel it's a great honor. I enjoy being a public servant. I think probably my favorite part of the job is my drop-in hours when I have residents coming one after another to tell me what they're thinking about city government. I really enjoy interacting with our residents and having that accessibility. It's very important to me. And I think it's clear. Over the last year and a half, I've made the very difficult decisions with the Common Council to correct some problems that the city's been facing. We have a new ethics committee in place. We have a new code of ethics. There's no more nepotism in the city of Lockport. That will not happen again. That in the past, I think, was a cause for problems in the city. We have a new audit committee made up of financial experts who are city residents who care about the city of Lockport and will make sure that our financial audit and our finances are properly taken care of in the future. We had to make difficult decisions that were gut-wrenching when we had to eliminate some city employees. It's a horrible feeling to know that we had to let some people go and their employment with the city was ended because we simply could not manage that financially. We took the steps that we needed to make to get the city of Lockport back on track. We've taken those steps. I'll continue to take those steps. I take this work very seriously. I put in every hour that's needed to make this city tick, and I'll continue to do that. I appreciate everybody's vote who's interested in voting for me. If somebody has a question and would like more information from me, and if it's regarding city business, you may call me at my office. After hours, you can call me at home. I'd be happy to discuss specific issues with you. But I just want to state that I'm completely committed to making sure that this city gets on track, stays on track, and starts to prosper in the future. I think I said it when I was on this stage when I was sworn in February of 2014 that my first goal was to stabilize the city of Lockport. I've done that. I think we've actually forgotten how bad things were because we're evening it out right now. And my second goal was to put the city on a path for prosperity. We're doing that. We've got more canal tourism coming. The state is investing heavily in the Flight of Five. I'm expecting businesses to continue to come to Lockport to support the Flight of Five tourism in the ice arena. We've got hockey tournaments coming in all winter long. I'm looking forward to having more people come to Lockport and making Lockport a better place to live, to visit, to work, and to be. And, you know, family is extremely important to me. As I look out in the audience tonight, I see lots of people that I know, and you all represent families. We want your families to want to be here. I want your family to be happy here, to have an opportunity for employment, to have opportunities for your children, for youth and recreation, to make Lockport a stronger, better, viable city. I think I've taken the hard steps to do that, and I appreciate your vote for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Mr. Sherrie, 3 minutes for you for your closing remarks, please.
The question that voters will have to answer within the next 3 weeks is, do you think you are better off today than you were 4 years ago? And do you trust this administration to do things differently than have been done before? My campaign has been about truth. It has been about the lack of political spin, because I think voters want someone who's just going to be straight with them. And that's what I'm trying to be as the candidate for mayor. Now, when I decided to run, it was because I saw politics and backroom deals being made, and I was tired of that. Now, my background was CSEA. I saw where mayors ignored civil service law. They violated contract language. It ended up being very expensive as far as outside attorney fees, $100,000 through June. It resulted in a decrease in the efficient delivery of city services, and it certainly had a negative impact on the city workforce. But one of the things that really struck me is that I saw what appeared to be almost a deliberate attempt to change our structure of government. We've had a weak mayor form of government for 150 years. As I said, the mayor does not vote on resolutions, only to break a tie. The mayor can appoint people to positions, but they must be confirmed or approved by the city council. What we have seen from this administration and the prior administration is a reliance on personal service contracts where terms and conditions of employment are structured so they are perhaps benefit to the individual as compared to the taxpayer. And we've seen so much information go through the office of the mayor. You know, I've talked to a number of older people who said, I've tried to get this piece of information or this was ignored to me and so forth. The fact that everything has to go through, or seems to be going through, that's my opinion, seems to be going through the mayor's office, that's the central collecting point, that's not what this city charter is all about. That's not what this charter calls for. Well, I'm running for mayor for a number of different reasons, and I have a number of different planks in my platform. But the most important one is that I want to have an open government policy in the city of Lockport, a policy that embraces transparency, public participation, and collaboration. I don't think we have that we don't have that, if we're honest with ourselves. We don't have that now, Mayor. And in order to affect that, I would appoint a special citizens open government advisory board to help develop and implement the plans necessary to make open government a part of the day-to-day business in the city of Lockport.
Very good. Thank you to... Thank you very much to both of you for participating tonight. I think voters got a pretty good education from both of you on where you stand on the issues. And we invite all of those in attendance here tonight to a quick reception out in the lobby. I think both of you are game to meet with the audience who has come out tonight, which I'm pleased to see so many of you did. So one last time, thank you to both of the candidates, and we'll wait and see how this turns out on Election Day.
And Eric, let me thank you and US&J Union Sun and Journal for sponsoring tonight's debate.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.